In this video, we're going to take a look at a red ink by Noodlers, a part of their V-Mail series, Rabauk Red. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also, down in the description is a link to the red ink playlist, so if you want to see more reds, you can check those out there. I'm Adam, I'm an ink guy. Let's get into the first writing sample, 90 GSM, Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and some very nice shading. Brown goes darker to lighter. Over goes dark to light to dark. The is very dark. 8 seconds to dry. Medium is lighter than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, some very, very nice shading. As quick goes dark to light to dark. Brown goes dark to light. So nice. Over goes light to dark. 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show good color variation, and we are getting it. In a smear test, you could definitely recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then, a Franklin Christoph Model 66 with a broad sig nib was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 14 seconds to dry. The medium is a little bit lighter than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does show some shading as brown goes darker to lighter. Dog goes lighter to darker. Lazy goes darker to lighter, 20 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show no color variation, although we do get some in the medium. And a smear test, you could not recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's immediately put in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And this was a very surprising chromatography for this red. Looking at the bottom, we see a very magenta tone pushing its way up, and we do see a little bit of a red. Now that magenta at the bottom is kind of a purple magenta, magenta purple. It's whichever one you want to call that. And at the very top, we see some yellow. I wasn't surprised by the yellow. I was surprised by the purple magenta tone at the bottom. The one on the right is let dry for 10 minutes, and what we see is it looks more purple than magenta there. A little bit of that pushes up. We do see some of the red, which is actually at the very top, and this hasn't reached there all the way. So we get this kind of purple, the yellow, and then the red in how these inks are moving. Quite interesting, but it does show that there may be some resistance here. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 10 seconds to dry. The medium is lighter than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, spots of shading. The K in quick looks darker than the rest of the word. The S in jumps looks darker than what's around. The R in over, a little bit darker, so there's little spots of it. 14 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show no color variation. We only get spots in the medium. And the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on a page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, you can feel safe using this in a note-taking situation if you need to go back and highlight, because it holds together really, really well. Water's lifting a lot of it, but really leaving that purpley tone that we saw from the chromatographies. It's really holding on to the paper there. Now, pen flush is starting to break down some of that purple tone. Not all of it, just a little bit, but it only had 30 seconds. 1/3 bleach solution is completely removing it while discoloring the paper a little bit, but it only took water to get this out of my pen. The next writing sample is done on white lines paper. Now there is significant amount of show through in certain areas, and some of these bleed spots that I'm circling, these aren't too bad. It's just that they might make the back of the paper a little unusable. Comes through a little more in the extra fine than it did in the medium, which is surprising, and there's quite a bit in the stub. I wouldn't use the back of the page, but I don't think it would stop most people, but it does not corrupt the paper underneath. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. It performed very well there. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. Still very nice. 3 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does shade as over goes lighter to darker. Quick goes dark to light to dark. Brown goes dark to light. 4 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show a tiny bit of color variation. I think it looks much, it's pretty okay in that medium. And the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Noodler's V-Mail Rabauk Red has a viscosity of 2.44, making it normal. If you're interested in how the viscosity tests and all that are done, then down in the description is a link to that video. Now let's take a look at Apica CD notebook paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, some spots of shading like dry starts darker to lighter. Over's lighter to darker. Quick goes darker to lighter to darker, a little bit lighter up into the K, and dark again. Brown goes dark to light. 6 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, very nice shading. Fox goes light to dark. Brown goes dark to light to dark. 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show a tiny bit of color variation, but it's much better in the writing, and the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, and the realm of normal was 13 to 21 seconds. Noodler's Rabauk Red has an average dry time of 13 seconds, putting it right on the edge, but normal. The last writing sample is done on lemon paper. Now this is not a paper I know to be very fountain pen friendly, but we do find inks that do fairly well. It bleeds heavy into but not through the paper. This is just some spots that come through. I don't see this as stopping most people from using the back of the paper. If you use the back, you're not going to corrupt both sides of your notes, so it's actually doing very well there. Now the 1.1, it has no feather, no spread, halo, sheen. It has no feather, but it has a little bit of spread. No halo sheen and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 2 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, some shading. Brown goes darker to lighter. Fox goes dark to light to dark. Over is light to dark. 3 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show very little color variation. It shows better in the extra fine scrubby, but it shows better in the medium writing. And the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Instead of finding inks that look like Noodler's Rabauk Red, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a classic black by Wancher Original, their Tenmoku black. Now, if you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of Noodler's Rabauk Red? This red looks a bit faded. Perhaps like a red cloth that is sun-bleached. It does give a good tone variation by pen and some nice peppering of shading. I like that it is just there on the page and not too bright a red. Certainly a red to consider. So what nib and pen will give the best writing experience with this ink? A very wet pen, especially a very wet broad, will put down a very dark, nice, rich red tone on the page. But I found I preferred it from a medium flow stub nib. I really liked the slightly lighter tone and a little bit of that peppering of shading that was there. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at Sailor's Chagor.